What's up, folks? This is Tony Brewer. You're listening to or watching, as the case may be, Cogitations. Cogitations is the podcast where we think about things, we contemplate them, we turn them over in our minds, and we discuss them. Daniel chapter 7, verse 28, Daniel writes, "Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me. My countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart." We're not going to keep the matter in our heart. We're going to talk about it. And today we're going to talk about Free for All Friday. I don't know how good this is going to be. This is not our normal time. We typically have a lot fewer people when we don't stream at our normal time, which is to be understood. Um, Hopefully, I'll come to a time in my life where I can be a whole lot more consistent, but we are doing what we can do, and we're dealing with what we can deal. Danny Minter, good afternoon to you. And we do have folks starting to roll in. So as folks start to roll in, and we typically have questions and comments and stuff come in. I was thinking about judgment and how important it is for a society to have judges who participate or practice their judgment without with impartiality, without being partial. Diana Harden, I meant to send you a message. I know it's your parents' 60th wedding anniversary. That's a big thing, and I appreciate it. And yeah, that's a good thing. And incidentally, for those of you that have asked, I don't want to give anything away here, so I'm just saying, for those of you that ask, here is the P.O. box, and I have received a card from one of our lovely listeners, and it was a monetary donation, and I'm so thankful I did receive it. Shame on me for not sending the person that sent it a personalized thank you in their private messages. But anyway, if you have show topics and questions, you can send an email to www.christianityisnow@gmail.com, and you can also request the P.O. box, and I'll send you that address as well. And I know with so many digital creators out there, you've got tip jar fatigue. Everybody's got their hand out. Everybody's trying to make a living doing digital creation. We're in the queue. So if you want to help us out monetarily, you don't want to send anything through the P.O. box, you don't want to do anything like on Substack or Patreon, you can just send a PayPal to nearchurches@gmail.com. All right. We'll get that off there. And let's get to where I can see the chat. Let's talk about this idea of righteous judgment. Does the Bible say anything about judges needing to be righteous and not accepting bribes? Well, you start in the book of Deuteronomy 16:18 through 19. Listen to it. Judges and officers shalt thou make thee in all thy gates, which the Lord thy God giveth thee throughout thy tribes, and they shall judge the people with just judgment. Thou shalt not wrest judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons, neither take a gift, for a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous. That's Deuteronomy 16:18 through 19. Deuteronomy is the second giving of the law. In the Pentateuch, laying the foundation, it is important for judges to be unbiased. Very important, all right? So, good afternoon, Jenny Blackwell from New York. It's good to see you. So now, we have in Exodus, you can see about bribery and corruption. The book of Exodus also addresses the issue of bribery and its destructive impact on justice. And Moses warns the people, Exodus 23, verse 8, "And thou shalt take no gift, for the gift blindeth the eyes of the wise and perverteth the words of the righteous." So think about the implications there. When it comes to a bribe, when it comes to a gift, if you're trying to influence somebody, you can influence with a bribe a person who is otherwise wise and righteous. This is a temptation. Think about the position you're putting them in. That's why it's illegal to even offer a bribe, because it degrades the moral fabric of our society, of our law enforcement, of our jurisprudence. We have no society unless the laws are applied equally without partiality. And even if you have really, 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 really good lawmakers, they're human. They could fall prey to a bribe. Notice in Exodus and Deuteronomy both, the gift, the bribe, blindeth the eyes or blindeth the wise and perverts the words of the righteous. So you have a person who is wise and righteous, but the bribe changes that. Judges are not infallible today. It's one of my biggest fears is to be brought before the court. So much uncertainty when leaving your future in the hands of another. Yes, and incidentally, I used to be pretty staunch, a staunch supporter of the death penalty. And in theory, I still am. I think it's a righteous thing to put to death those who take the life of another human being. In fact, Genesis 9, the covenant that is there is still, let me go to my e-sword there. I can't remember if that's Genesis 9:6, but we don't have to worry about it because we can read it. Genesis 9, I think it's 6. Yeah. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man. I don't read anything in my Bible, Danny, that says that that's not still true. That covenant that God made between him and man is still in effect. That Noahic covenant. Now, who gets to wield that sword of vengeance against an evildoer that takes another man's life? Well, that's Romans chapter 13. It's the government. Now, what greatly concerns me about today is I see the government and I see the wickedness that, as far as justice goes, it is played out. And I don't know that I trust these people with the death penalty. So, yeah, I get it. I know why people oppose it. I mean, think about Kamala Harris, who basically turned the justice system and the prison system into a slave farm. I mean, she put people away for decades on possession of marijuana. Do you really want her deciding whether or not somebody ultimately has the right to live or not? Man, I don't. It's difficult to want to put to death someone without having complete facts, but they are the ones that shed innocent blood. Yeah. And like I said, I think my trepidation in modernity, I think we've let corruption go on too long. I think our values have too far separated from Judeo-Christian values. I'm not saying that I'm totally opposed to the death penalty. I'm not saying that we should be bleeding heart liberals. I'm just saying I get it. I get why people are scared of it. Harris laughed at the fact that she had the ability to ruin someone's life just by the swipe of her pen. Yeah, it's pretty sadistic. It really is. All right. So, going on to Leviticus. Leviticus also highlights the necessity of impartiality in judgment. Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. Leviticus 19:15. So in Exodus and Deuteronomy, those passages we read there talked about an otherwise righteous and wise judge being turned or tainted by a bribe. And this one just understands that there are going to be some judges that, even without a bribe, would just be tempted to show partiality to the poor or to the rich. And think about that. I mean, I know that in recent years, some very high profile cases, they were definitely partial. In fact, this George Floyd, I can't remember the guy's name that was the face of that trial. The white guy, Derek Chauvin. Anyway, that dude was just railroaded. He did not receive a fair trial. And that's not up for debate. Like, there was a juror that said as much to a news reporter. And the reason is because they showed partiality to George Floyd because of the color of his skin. And the reason that this guy was put away the way he was is because of the color of his skin. And I'm not going to back off of that. I don't care who gets riled up by it. All right. But let's talk about let's go to the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 17:23. And look, there's a bunch of them in Proverbs. I just pulled this one. A wicked man taketh a gift out of the bosom to pervert the ways of judgment. Folks, this verse directly associates a bribe with wickedness and perversion of justice. A judge who accepts a bribe is seen as corrupt, and it leads to a miscarriage of justice. That's why we have to protect the sovereignty of our legal system. We have to protect the sovereignty of our legal system. 2 Chronicles on the duty of judges. 2 Chronicles 19:6-7. And said to the judges, take heed what you do, for you judge not for man, but for the Lord who is with you in the judgment. Wherefore now let the fear of the Lord be upon you. Take heed and do it, for there is no iniquity with the Lord our God, nor respect of persons, nor taking of gifts. Jehoshaphat, this is King Jehoshaphat, instructs the judges he appointed, reminding them of their duty. They're not merely judging for the people. They're judging for God. Jehoshaphat's instruction to the judges reflects the seriousness of their duty. Like I said, they're to judge as if they're representatives of God, with the responsibility to uphold justice without partiality or corruption. God does not accept bribes. God cannot be corrupted from just judgment. Therefore, his judges have to be similarly unassailable. And again, this is almost nothing compared to what the Bible teaches on the subject. Like I said, it's from the two verses we read, one in Deuteronomy, one in Exodus. The implication is an otherwise righteous and just and wise judge. It is an affront to him to be bribed, because you can affect him. You can pervert his judgment with a bribe. He is not above falling prey to that temptation. That's not a shortcoming of his. Look, man, I've got a very strict code of ethics and a set of morals by which I live my life. They are found between the covers of God's word, of the book, the Bible. If you threw $100 million down in my lap, I don't know. I've never been faced with that much money to compromise my beliefs. I've been through a few little old tests in the past, and I have passed. But what if you threw $100 million down in my lap? I don't know. Maybe I'd compromise. I hope I wouldn't, but I can read what the Bible talks about wise and just judges. And a bribe can turn them. They are not above accepting a bribe and being tempted by a bribe to the point of falling. Am I as just and as wise as these judges under consideration? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe $100 million would turn me from my course. I hope that doesn't make you think less of me. hopefully that makes you, well, Tony, I'm with you. I'm comforted. We're all just trying to get through this life and do the best we can. I have solace that God is in control, so I vow to trust in him, and as we should. And so much dark money is corrupting our land these days, there really isn't a sense of honor, in my opinion. The government seems to bow down to the highest bidder. I would agree with that. Yeah, the lobbyist and stuff like that, which I've never understood the idea of lobbyist. That seems like you're offering bribes to lawmakers. How in the world can we have a lobbyist coalition in the United States of America where it's a lobby for a public interest group that's actually bribing our lawmakers? Now, granted, they're not judges. A congressman isn't a quote unquote judge, but for this kind of situation, yeah, they do act as judges because they set law. And if you've got a company, let's say you've got a big tobacco company and you want to still make money, and you know that a vote to raise the legal purchase age for tobacco from 18 to 21, maybe you go in with a big old wad of money and you offer a bunch of vacations and care packages and fruit baskets and vouchers to middle schools and high schools and colleges, and maybe you get that vote killed on the floor. But that's not good. That's wrong. But it happens. At least I understand it to happen. Maybe somebody watching this can correct me. Am I wrong? Is that not how the lobbyists work? And I don't know what the legal age for purchasing cigarettes is in the USA anyway. I think it went up. Nope, it's 21 in all 50 states and the District of Columbia, according to the American Lung Association. I wonder what it is in Canada. So evidently they've changed it. So you can die for your country, but you can't go buy a pack of Marlboro Reds. Interesting. Well, Danny Mentor says that's the exact way to describe lobbying. I was thinking I had it right. Oh, Canada, Canada. In Canada, it is illegal to sell or provide tobacco products to anyone under the age of 18. Yeah, I think you can drink here when you're 18. I could be wrong. Maybe 19, I don't know. But I wasn't using the cigarette lobby and all that as an exact for instance. But I do know, I mean, I would guarantee that something like that happened whenever they were voting on that in the United States. I guarantee you there was a lot of congressmen got treated and schmoozed and got treated real well and schmoozed before that vote. You can fight foreign wars, yet alcohol and tobacco are not good for you. They are given to all the troops that are deployed. Yet they are given to all the troops that are deployed. Yeah. And listen, I'm not a tobacco and alcohol proponent. I don't think you ought to be doing that mess, but just from a secular standpoint, I find it very odd that you can sign, well, you can sign a mortgage at 18. You can you can take out a loan for a car at 18. You can sign your life away to the government at 18, join the military during a time of war and go overseas and get killed. But you cannot go down to the gas station and buy a pack of squares. I find that to be very odd. Well, we don't have a whole lot of questions rolling in on the Free for All Friday. I'm glad Danny's here to keep us company and talk to us. And I knew our crowd was going to be light. We got some regulars that they've got their time scheduled pretty tightly. Yeah, double standards if you're a government worker, i.e. military. I can see that. Well, Folks, I don't have a whole lot to talk about today. I talked about that judgment. I just found it very interesting with like a lot of stuff that's in the news. I'll tell you what got me to thinking about this was this Hunter, Hunter Biden has pled guilty with no parachute. And I was listening to some political pundits talk about why. And somebody offered, well, it could be that all of the lawfare that they're waging against Donald Trump, they could be going after Hunter Biden just to be able to say, see, we're bipartisan. We're going after both sides. What Hunter Biden is dealing with and what Donald Trump is dealing with is two totally different things. It is just to go after Hunter. Donald Trump has not committed an underlying crime for which he can be gone after. This is the thing. That's the whole point about that. But I remember thinking when I was listening to the political pundits, well, it wouldn't put it past me. I wouldn't be surprised. And then that got me to thinking about what the Bible says about justice and about how important it is that we have a fair and impartial legal system. Because Romans chapter 13 and the powers that be and the ministry of God wielding the sword of vengeance on behalf of God against an evildoer, all that just flies out the window whenever the justice system is not impartial. We have to have an impartial justice system. And for the most part, it still is. Like there's some issues that are creeping up, but for the most part, it still is. So anybody that listens to this, my request would be dig in, be unmovable. Don't let them rob us of our justice system. Cast your vote in November for justice, for the right side of the aisle. You may absolutely hate Republicans. You may hate Donald Trump and everything he stands for. At least turn our governance over to that side of the aisle for a few years to see if they do anything different. I remember how exceptionally good life was while Donald Trump was in office. Give him a shot again. What's it going to hurt? Anyway, Trump may be the only man in history that lost money as a sitting president. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Danny says, thanks, Tony. Always eager to listen to God's word. Appreciated it. Yeah, Danny, he donated his salary every year. About $400,000. He donated it. Blows my mind why people hate him so much. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to invite him to preach our next gospel meeting. But there's a whole lot of candidates that could be really, really worse. And if we sit idly by, we'll get them. I promise you that. Well, that's all I got, folks. This has been Tony Brewery with Free for All Friday. Remember, act and live out your life and your Christianity in a world where you can affect the world around you. And I've already made several different podcasts about Christians and voting and politics and stuff like that. I think we ought to engage in this system, seeing as God is the one that set it up. What do you think? That's all I've got. God bless every one of you. This has been Tony Brewer with Cogitations. If you like what we do and want to help us out, there's all kinds of ways to do that in the show notes, I should say. And if you want to listen to the archive of this, go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Podbean, just about anywhere you can listen to a podcast, and type in Cogitations. We're going into the cogitationless weekend. I'll see you back on Monday, Lord willing, at the proper time and the proper place. And until then, avail yourself of the content that we put out on Substack. I look forward to Aaron's article from the book of Romans tomorrow. And other than that, God bless you, and we'll catch you